We are part of Fired Up Sports Network of shows. We are part of the Fired Up Sports Network of shows. We are part of the Fired Up Sports Network of shows. We are part of the Fired Up Sports Network of shows. Please check out other Fired Up Sports Network podcasts.
The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions.
Swinging a miss, struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Flyers are going to win the Stanley Cup. The Flyers win the Stanley Cup for the lead. Yes!
Iverson, wow, what a fake off Daniels as he broke his ankles and got all the way to the cup.
Well, good morning. It's opening day. We got baseball today. Unfortunately, not with the Phils, but on episode 188 of Drunk on the Phils. Eric, it's like pseudo Christmas morning-ish, kind of. It's like almost like Christmas got delayed. It's like one of your parents had to work, so you got to push the day back a little bit. But excited for this Phillies season to start, and excited. MLB will have, I guess, free reign of the remote control to kind of go up and down the dial, trying to find whatever games are on. But it's been a long road back since that unfortunate ending for the way that the Phillies season kind of wrapped up, and the uneventful, thankfully uneventful spring training of being able to kind of navigate through what we didn't have to figure out, which is a good thing. There weren't really position battles, other than a couple of spots, which we'll talk about. But Eric, welcome in. Opening day. How we feeling?
Great. Like you said, the only thing that's missing is the Phillies, but it's better they made the call when they did rather than dealing with rain delays, especially, first day out. You don't want, two aces getting up, getting down, having to wait and everything like that for delays. So it is what it is. It stinks waiting one extra day. We've waited this long, though. I guess we could do one more. But it's exciting. It's always exciting having that new year kind of come. You kind of said it. To me, opening day is like basically Christmas. I sometimes I might actually get more excited for opening day, to be honest. But in all seriousness, it's seriously one of like my favorite days of the year. Like waking up today and just being able to check, okay, my fantasy lineups and everything, checking pitchers, all that stuff. It's started something new. And the Phillies, we know how last season ended. There's a bitter taste in the fans' mouth. The players were talking about it over the offseason. I think everyone is kind of ready for that revenge to try to get back to where they were, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, listen, they have probably one of their best rosters, to date. There weren't a ton of position battles, which is a great thing. You look, the only really position that they were like pseudo trying to figure out was the outfield. You knew you were going to have Castellanos out there, figuring out, with now sliding Harper to first base. You knew that you're going to get some combination of, in the other two outfield spots, some combination of, Rojas, Pache, Marsh, depending on probably the pitching matchup. Those guys are going to hit at the back end of your lineup. So what are your expectations going into this season in terms of those two other outfield spots?
So I think it seems like the Phillies really want Rojas to be that center fielder. Defensively, you definitely see why. I mean, he's a game changer out there. Probably already one of the top, 5, maybe even higher defensive center fielders in the game. But again, it's been since he was a prospect, right? It's like, all right, the dude can play center field. He can catch any ball that's hit, in his direction, or last year Schwarber's direction too. but it's going to come down to the hitting, right? And that's what the kind of knock on him always was that he's not going to be the best hitter. He put in the time over the offseason with Kevin Long and everything, but, the results didn't really translate in spring training. I don't know how much you put stock into that because, when guys are working through things, going against, live pitching and trying to, make tweaks and everything, you're not going to see immediate results. I think they'll give him, a few months to kind of see if he can get that offensive production going. If not, Pache is an option. You have Marsh as an option in center field, and then you have things to play with left field, right? I mean, you can put Whit Merrifield out there. Schwarber, I do expect to play there a few times a week still. I don't expect him to play there a lot, but Thompson's going to want to get other guys days off in the field. So I would expect at least once or twice a week, probably Schwarber to be out in left field. So, I think they have a lot of wiggle room there. I don't know if all of it's necessarily what we want or if it's all good, but they have options to at least try. And I think that was kind of the theme of the offseason, right? Like, we're not making any big moves right now because we like the team we have. And it's going to be kind of see how the first half plays out. If we need to upgrade something in the outfield, there's the trade deadline for that. So, it's one of those things where it's a fixable thing. And there could be bigger issues out there. Like you said in the beginning, it's going to be a bottom half of the lineup guy, right? He's probably, Rojas, Pache, they're going to hit ninth. So, you don't need 300 production out of your 9-hole. You just need a guy who can, work a count a little bit. You need a guy who can get on base if Schwarber is leading off to, put some guys out there for him to knock in. So I think they do have the wiggle room for it. And again, it's one of those things where I think it's really going to be unpredictable until we see exactly what happens with Rojas and his offensive output over the first month or two of the season.
Yeah, I think for me the question for me is, does do the defensive metrics that he brings in terms of being able to cover as much ground as he does and save runs outweigh what the lack of offensive production in the lineup? So I'm looking at that going, okay, like I might live with the, really crappy batting average if I'm getting the defensive metrics on the other in the field. I look at that and go, he's a guy that if he is going to be what we think he could be defensively, I'm willing to live with that in this lineup because of the other guys in the lineup. There is a lot of forgiveness that you can have, and there is a lot of roster flexibility that, like, in the back end of a game, if he comes up in the 6th inning, and the bases are loaded, kind of similar to the game in Arizona where he came up in the 4th with the bases loaded. You now have the roster flexibility to bring a guy like Whit Merrifield off the bench and feel pretty comfortable with putting him in the field in one of those two outfield spots and being able to slide a Pache or a Marsh to center. I think the way that Dombrowski has built the back end of this lineup, that Whit Merrifield signing, to me, is like a genius move because it gives them that vet offensive production. And can't remember where I heard it in the offseason, but the Whit Merrifield signing was essentially like a Bryce Harper phone call. We want you to come. And it was like, oh, gotcha. Okay, I'm in. So to know that you have a guy on your roster and to see the free agents that have come in after Bryce Harper and to see his ability to be able to have that aura of having guys, big name guys that want to play with him, that want to be around him. To me, that says everything I need to know about, at some point down the line, when that extension conversation pops up again, which we know it's going to, that to me just says you let this guy finish his career. You give him, I don't care if you give him the Bobby Bonilla contract where you pay him until 2050, Like you do whatever you got to do to be able to make him happy, because what he brings outside of the incredible on-field production, you can't put a price tag on that, because he's a guy that people want to be around. He's a guy that people want to play with, and he has really lived up to everything that he said he was going to be when he was talking about having the no trade contracts, when he was talking about, wanting to raise his kids here. I love what I see from the back end of that, to be able to kind of look at it from a top down perspective and see, like, all right, there's a bigger picture here, because they have, they have the roster to be able to compete in a playoff series with the Braves.
Yeah, definitely. Especially like pitching wise, you look at it, and I think it's a lot of people, over the offseason were saying, go get, and we said it too, how nice it would be to have Montgomery or one of these other starters. But realistically, I mean, if you look at every ranking that came out over the offseason, the Phillies rotation is in, I think, the top 6 in every single one I saw. So they're right there with everyone else. The bullpen should, barring any setbacks or anything, should be really good. And we know what the offense can do. And you're right. I mean, the going back to the Harper Merrifield thing, it's like everything Harper said he was going to do, he did, right? And he's kind of said he's almost taking on like a pseudo GM role almost. And Dombrowski did an interview, I guess it was last week or so. And there was, one of the things he was talking about was how Bryce was like, hey, would you mind if I reached out to Merrifield? And one of the follow-up questions was, well, is there ever a time where like it seems like he's like overstepping his bounds? And Dombrowski basically said no. Like he even said, let me know if I am doing that. Like if I'm doing too much, like let me know. I'll take a step back. And I think it's really good that you have a guy that can relate to the players like Bryce, and then the ownership and front office who's willing to kind of work with him and use what he knows about the game and the players he knows and the influence he has over other players to make this team better. And we've talked about it, I think, for the last, year or so now, that everything Bryce does has helped this franchise, whether it's been on the field or off the field. What he's been able to bring in and just, what he says and how he carries himself, he just does everything the right way. So it's one of those things where, I mean, it was really a franchise altering signing when they got him. And that's really, I think, what that team needed at the time, needed that injection. But it also helps having, when Harper signed here, one of the caveats was, okay, if I'm signing here, I need ownership and the front office to agree with me that, we're playing to win. And both sides are holding up their end of the bargain at this point. So I think it's really been great. And the Merrifield signing, having Bryce talk to him and reach out, and Merrifield taking less money, taking less playing time to come to a team to help out kind of on the peripherals a little bit. Now, I think he might have a bigger role than anyone really thought when we signed him, just because of kind of that influx outfield situation, that outfield situation right now. And so I don't know. We'll see what happens. But he had a really nice spring. I think he's 35, so I don't really want him playing center field at all. But I think if you can put if Rojas isn't hitting and you want to give him a day off to figure things out, you could put Marsh in center field. You could put Merrifield in left. The only issue here is now Marsh is obviously the lefty, but you have Pache, Rojas, and Merrifield who are all right-handed bats. So like pinch hitting, like removal type situation, other teams can kind of plan for that, right? And put in, a nasty righty or something like that to kind of counteract that move. But back to the point you were making in Arizona when Rojas came up in a huge situation and had maybe one of the worst at bats I've ever seen from a position player. That's one of those things where that's the biggest thing I think he needs to work on is, obviously we don't want to see a 160, 180 batting average.
Right.
But if we can get like a 220 batting average, 225 batting average, you could take that because of the defensive metrics, like you were saying. But he also has to just be able to string together a decent at bat. Like, I mean, he that was horrible how he went down there. And I really think that was the epitome of the collapse of that series. Like just seeing that, it's like, oh boy, things are not going well at this point. So I hope that's something that he's adjusted to, just seeing the ball better out of a pitcher's hand.
Yeah, that to me, that at bat was it turned out as well as the Alvarado move to bring him in against Houston. They both kind of epically turned out as bad as they possibly have could.
Yeah.
But you hope that a young guy being around a lot of a really, really vet heavy lineup, that can only help him. And you look at what that has done for guys like Stott, for Bohm, being around those vets, learning the kind of ropes you saw, in those second and third years, the leaps that Stott and Bohm that they took. And I think, to me, if you get any kind of offensive production out of Rojas, it's all a bonus. Because at this point, it's nothing that we anticipated it was going to be. Right. So, like, to look at that and go, I'm going to get offensive production, that all that stuff is a win. Now, Whit Merrifield, he is old, right? He's not a young guy, but he's a professional hitter, man. He will just go up there and he'll grind at bats. He'll put the ball in play, which in those spots late in the games, you need a guy coming off the bench that, isn't essentially, a pass, in the lineup. Because last year, that was one of the holes. They really didn't have a guy coming off the bench that anybody really feared. It's just, I think the right-handed heavy, situation coming off the bench could be a situation that they probably address, late in the, closer to the trade deadline, when they kind of see how this, kind of season shakes out. I'm curious to see during the season what kind of adjustments they make. Because if we start with if we're looking at the opening day roster, right, the move that we were all kind of, thought that they might be in on, thought that they should be in on, right? The Jordan Montgomery move goes down, a couple of days ago, where he signs essentially the 1+1 in Arizona. It's the 1 year, $25 million with the option for the second year at the same number. It's a number I would have been in on. And it's a number I feel like that, they could have swung, and I couldn't imagine, putting together a rotation that would have been Wheeler, Nola, Montgomery, Suarez, and that the depth that might give you. But he goes to Arizona. The West seems like they're going to be, kind of beating each other up, which, all things considered, the NL East looks like it's going to be a two-team race between the Phillies and Braves. Maybe that's a good thing for them to be able to get, that, put them in a situation where you got the Giants, the Cardinals, the Dodgers, the Diamondbacks all kind of beating up on each other.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps. I also think getting off, right away with the Braves, getting off to a quick series against them can really be a trendsetter, I guess, because this series is going to matter. I mean, we only play them 4 times now, I think, with the new schedules and everything. So, I mean, you don't want to come in and just completely get trounced by the Braves as, in the opening week here. So I think it's one of those things where it is going to be an important series. I think it's pretty much a 2-horse race in the East. It's funny though. I feel like the Marlins are always like that pesky team that like kind of hangs around for a little while. But then, they get rid of everyone. So it's kind of like, okay, who do they have next? And then all of a sudden there's like another guy who's like, okay, where did this guy come from? But yeah, the NL West, it made a lot of moves. They spent a lot of money, this offseason, which, is good for baseball. The Dodgers obviously on paper look like probably the best team, with all their changes and everything. But you look at it too. Like I was looking at their roster and how many pitchers are injured. Because I was watching that Soul series before work. I woke up early a couple of days to watch that. And, Yamamoto, again, I think he's going to be fine. But he got shelled. I mean, 43 pitches to get through the first. I think he gave up, 5 earned runs or something. He didn't come out for the second even. And I think it is a major adjustment to kind of crown this guy as, a potential Cy Young or Rookie of the Year guy when he hasn't actually faced Major League hitting. I think I remember seeing back during COVID because when baseball was off, I think one of the things every baseball fan did, we watched the Korean League, right? And what I remember reading was that the Korean League was basically like AA, okay, the same competition level as like AA, and the Japanese league was basically the same as like almost like a AAA, right? So you got it. Now again, Yamamoto's stuff is nasty, so it can easily translate to being competitive against major leaguers, but never having really faced them except in the World Baseball Classic, which is kind of a completely different setting. I think there's going to be a kind of a learning curve for him. I think he will still be a good pitcher, but I think it was a little premature to just think, okay, this guy's going to mow down every player he sees, because that Padres lineup was not really all that impressive. Like, you look like 1 through 4 was pretty good, but after that, it kind of dropped off a lot. But I think the West will be a closer race than people think. The Dodgers, for some reason, just seem to have like a health issue. They have so many pitchers that are hurt to start off the season. Now they have plenty of depth, and they've made so many moves where they could probably play through it. But I mean, the Giants got a little bit better. The Diamondbacks, I think, they had a really sneaky good offseason. They made a lot of good moves. Their pitching staff got a lot better. So I don't know. The West should be kind of interesting. But yeah, you never know. The Diamondbacks coming off a National League championship, they could be another. They have that experience now. Maybe that they're another team to be reckoned with again this year in 2024.
Yeah, and the craziest thing, as you're talking about it, I'm thinking about like the craziest thing, because you mentioned Yamamoto, right? So, and this to me was like, gave me kind of an inkling that they might be in more on Jordan Montgomery than they were letting on, was because of the number that came out when they had talked about how in they were with Yamamoto, right? When the news basically came out that like the financial number that they had put out with Yamamoto was either at the top or very, very, very competitive. Which to me said like they're willing to spend money. They want to go out and improve this starting pitching. So to me, I thought like, okay, well, then maybe they're more in on Jordan Montgomery than they want to let anybody, kind of let on. And I really wonder what it would have taken to get it done. Because it wouldn't have, if you had said we're going to sign him for two years for 50, that to me wouldn't have been like, if you had guaranteed the second year, or that wouldn't, to me that wouldn't have been like crazy risky. That would have been a way to solidify your rotation at the top end, because the Fangraph stuff that comes out with the way that they're ranking the Phillies bullpen kind of heads and tails above pretty much anybody else in terms of what they have in their bullpen and the depth that they have. I don't know. I thought that maybe they would have been a little bit more in on that than they end up being. But listen, he goes there. He's going to join that rotation. And we'll see how that kind of shakes out. We'll see if the Diamondbacks are kind of the 1 year wonder, and they kind of just caught lightning in a bottle and they were able to put it together. Whether they caught the Phillies at a really, really time where their bats just simultaneously all fell asleep, and everybody was trying to do this. Everybody's all trying to do too much all at the same time. Or whether or not they were for real. And I am kind of curious to see how that kind of plays out. But talk about this rotation, because, right, the rotation that they're going to start with, right, they're going to go Wheeler, Nola, Suarez, and then you got, Sanchez. And then at the back end, you've that fifth spot is going to be, probably some combination of Taijuan Walker, Spencer Turnbull.
Yeah, I mean, I think 1 through 3 has potential to be really, really good. Sanchez, from everything I'm reading, no one is really down on him. And I don't think there's a reason to be. I mean, he filled in, admirably last year. So I really like where they're at. The Walker thing is a little bit concerning. And you were talking about, guaranteeing that extra year to Montgomery and not being all that risky. I think going 4 years for Taijuan Walker was a little bit risky. Because now, we're seeing the decrease in velocity. Now he had the late start to spring training and everything, so it's kind of to be expected. But the two totally separate kind of injury type things, right? The knee soreness when he came into spring training that he missed to be to be shelved for a little bit. And now, what is it? Shoulder, I think it is now.
Yeah.
It's a bit concerning. But the thing is like with Walker, there's kind of like two different ways to look at him, I think, because he does eat innings. I think he pitched almost 175 innings last year, which is, I mean, for a 4 or 5 starter, really all you can ask for. Now, was he always the most effective? No. But again, with the state of starting pitching in baseball right now, it's one of those things where if that's a guy who's, at least giving you 5, take it. I am really excited about Spencer Turnbull. I
All right, talk to me about that, because I've done a little digging on it, but I'm still kind of hedging.
So the biggest issue right now was I think he had Tommy John surgery. What was it? The end of 2022 or the beginning of 2023. Because last year his velocity was down and he did not have a good year last year at all. But if you look at the year before that, now again, he was not like ace material, but he has some really good stuff. And when he's topping out in the high 90s, he can easily get hitters out. I think he's a really interesting depth signing there for whatever it was, the $2 million or whatever, because I really think that he could be more valuable if he can get that velocity back up to where it was. I really think he could be more valuable than Taijuan Walker at a much, much lower price.
Right.
The issue now is, what do you do with Walker? Because you can't pitch out of the bullpen. And you got him for this year. I think he's signed through 2026, right? Yeah, I think so. We have him this year. He signed a 4-year deal. So this will be year 2. So we got 2 more years after that. So I don't really know. I think Spencer Turnbull is the answer to the number 5 spot or the competition with Walker. Maybe not necessarily, but I mean, I like the upside there is more so than what you have with Walker. Walker, you know what you're going to get. He's going to go out. He's going to get some runs, but he's going to eat innings. Turnbull, I feel like, has the stuff where he could go out every now and then and pitch a really, really good game. But then again, depending on velocity, if it goes down a little bit, he could also go out there and get shelled. So it kind of depends on which version we're seeing and how healthy he is. Because, a lot of guys do come back from Tommy John and get that velocity back. It takes a little while to build it up. But if he's ramping up and can get to that point, it'll hit 96, 97 again. I really like what we could potentially have with him. And who knows, this could be, for him, this is probably like let me show everyone what I have here to try to get a bigger contract later on, because he's still relatively young. But I really like that signing. When I heard that he was going to be the guy filling in that 5 spot for Walker while he's out, that to me, I don't think the Phillies lose much there.
No, I think when I looked at it, I'm going, I think I kind of landed in the same spot. You kind of already know what you're getting from Taijuan Walker. To me, I'm looking at this and going, there is the upside is kind of where I was kind of hedging to say, like, the only hard part is that roster spot, to say, like, what do you do with that extra roster spot when both of them are healthy? The financial commitment and the years that you've committed to Taijuan Walker, I think you kind of owe it to yourself that, like, geez, if that means you got to eat that money and, kind of move him just to be able, because you owe it to the roster and to the team to be able to put the best 5 guys out there every day. And, if the alternative is kind of sticking him in the bullpen and, making him a long guy that, comes in and eats innings like you did last year, only in a different role, when, it's either games you're up big or down big, figuring out a role for him. Because I think functionally he can fill a role on this roster, but I just don't know if that I don't know what that means. I'm curious to see how it shakes out. I think maybe the injury to Taijuan Walker right now kind of gives them the opportunity to kind of figure that out on the fly. The bullpen to me, I love. I feel like you got fastballs coming out at wherever you want. The arm that, kind of everybody loves is the Alvarado with the swagger that he comes out with. I love what you got out of Jeff Hoffman last year. That to me was a huge surprise. You got Gregory Soto, who you stole from the Dodgers for essentially nothing. You got, Dominguez, they lock up Strom. You got Marte, Brogdon, Kirkring. You got a lot of guys. You got rights and lefts. You got guys that are going to come out. I think the best thing for me that I look at is you got guys that are going to come in and get outs.
Yeah, I really like and it's funny hearing this because, 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, if we talked about the Phillies bullpen, we'd be having a very different conversation. But they've really done a good job constructing this and kind of finding those guys. And I give so much credit to Caleb Cotham and Brian Kaplan. They have completely turned around this entire pitching staff. Like, they're getting pretty much the best out of everyone. From the rotation and the bullpen. Like, what they did to turn Jeff Hoffman around is incredible. So yeah, I think a lot of the bullpen hinges on obviously I think Kirkring, when he's built back up and everything after that flu thing, he's going to be back pretty quickly. And I think it's one of those things where there's going to be some, he's still really young. He didn't really pitch much in the major leagues last year, so he's gonna be good, but he's probably gonna have a couple outings here and there where it's like, all right, he's a young guy. This is to be expected. I think the biggest key right now is Sir Anthony, because he had a down year last year, but he looked pretty good this spring. I like seeing that. He's going to be a big piece there because I know he's a guy that the bullpen really relies on, especially with that stuff he has. It's just a matter of honing in that control, which is kind of what I think was his downfall last year. But yeah, I mean, keeping Hoffman at the same or at least close to the same productivity as last year will be huge. Some interesting ones that are there. Brogdon, he had some really good spring outings, some really not good spring outings, but he's out of options. So it's kind of like if he's going to, this is kind of like his showcase, I think, while Kirkring and Taiwan are out, they had basically those 2 extra spots on the for pitchers to bring up. So we'll see what happens with him. Matt Strom, I love the extension there. That was great getting him for another year or two. I love his, like I said, he just looks like a maniac out there on the mound. Like, he gets so fired up. I love watching him come off after a big strikeout and he is just like screaming. He does that little jump over the line and everything like that. I love Strom in that role. But yeah, I mean, like,
a guy that's kind of just built for the city.
He is. Yeah. I mean, exactly. He looks like it. He acts like it. Like, he's just like a lunatic out there, and it's so fun to watch. But yeah, I mean, I really like, and then even having some, knowing Kirkring can be coming back, like you said, when Walker is healthy, they're going to put him back in the rotation, right? They at least have to see what he's going to do. And I think prior to the Walker injury, Turnbull was going to be that long guy because Dylan Covey's hurt too. So I think that's going to be kind of thing. It's just going to be, okay, who's going to be sent down when Kirkring is back and when Walker's back to make room for those guys on the roster. But I like the versatility that they have with the bullpen right now. And yeah, I mean, the projections, the fact that everyone is kind of recognizing. I said earlier that I think I didn't see a Phillies projection for the rotation being below like 6th in the league. Bullpen, I don't think I've seen anything below like the top 3. So that says a lot for how not just we view it, but how the league and experts around baseball are viewing the Phillies bullpen right now.
Yeah, it's wild to kind of go through the MLB, like the MLB projections, right? And to look at, like, it seems like in the top 5, and it didn't matter in what category, whether it was, rotation, bullpen, lineup. It seems like the Phillies and Braves are in the top 5. They're always in that conversation.
In everything.
And even the one that I'm looking at with the MLB, right? They've got the Phillies at 1, they got the Braves at 2. So, to look at that and to know that, again, it's not just us drinking the red Kool-Aid, that around the league, this is, as a group, they're as respected as they are, to me says a ton. And then to kind of go around the horn, right? You got, so nothing really changes at catcher, right? You bring back the same 2 guys with Real Muto and Stubbs. I think that there you kind of solidify, what you're going to get out of JT. You're going to play him, pretty much as many games as you can, where you get Stubbs that's going to come in to play the day games after the night games. You're probably going to see some opportunities to get JT off his feet. Maybe if he has an opportunity, one of those games where Schwarber's not going to be the DH, to either do that or you put him at first, you let Harper get a day off. Does kind of feed into that roster flexibility. First base, obviously, you're going to slide Harper in there, and this will be his first full season at that position. I was really impressed for a guy that just kind of picked up first base in the middle of coming back from an injury and knowing that he was going to get some full-time, time there. When I look at what the offensive production, when you compare him to Reese, right? Obviously the offensive production that you're getting from Harper is higher. Defensively, what's the ceiling for Harper? Because I feel like the ceiling defensively is significantly higher than whatever you were going to get from Hoskins.
Yeah, I think we saw Reese's ceiling at first, which wasn't very high. But he offered that right-handed power bat off the bench. Like this is not to downplay Reese at all. He was a huge part of the Phillies for however many years.
Right.
But I think you do have a way higher ceiling with Bryce. Now, it's also important to remember, like, Bryce was never really rated as a great defensive outfielder either. I mean, he was good, don't get me wrong. Like, he wasn't going to hurt you out there really.
Right.
But I think the biggest thing with Bryce is the offensive production he's going to get. But already he's been a better defensive first baseman than Reese was.
Yeah.
And, he only played, like you said, it wasn't even a half a season. I don't even know if it was a half a season doing it. So it just speaks to his athleticism and his work ethic to say, okay, I think Bryce is one of those guys where it's like, if he's going to do something, he's going to want to be the best at it. Right. And you see how he just throws himself around out there. There were a few things when he first started, like he would have the wrong foot on the bag sometimes, or he would try to, beat the pitcher to the bag when it could just be an easy toss over to, get a guy out. A couple little things there, but that's part of the learning curve. But I really like it. I think a full season with Harper at first is going to give a lot more consistency for him and for the rest of the infield as a whole too. Now, that's not to say I think he's another one, just for health purposes and longevity, they're going to try to get him in the DH spot here and there as well. But I really like having him there as that full-time first baseman. And again, we really don't know how good he can be at first, but so far, everyone is saying that he's doing what he needs to do. And I mean, we could see it. He passes the eye test too, right? He made some good plays. He's way more versatile. Like he's way more, I guess, what's the word? Mobile over there at first base as well compared to Reese. So I really like the prospects of him over there.
Yeah, I think the upside is significantly more on the defensive end than what the offensive production. It's more than Hoskins would give you, but the jump defensively, I think, is kind of equivalent to when you think about it, it's almost like the Rojas situation in reverse, right? The jump that you're getting with Rojas being on the field defensively significantly improves your team. So I think in the same way, the defensive upgrade that Harper gives you at first. And I think long term, it's kind of where he was going to end up anyway. He was going to end up in that spot. It just kind of everything that kind of happened fast tracked exactly where he was probably going to end up. And then other spots around the infield, right? You know that you're going to get Stott and Turner up the middle, pretty much as many days as you possibly can. You're going to get Merrifield that's going to spell Stott. Merrifield is going to basically spell whoever needs a spot, right? So
yeah,
you could see him playing any of the infield positions. You could see him pretty much playing basically any position other than catcher.
Yeah.
I think my hope in terms of Stott, I really hope that they give him an opportunity to play every day, regardless of the pitcher. Not look for those. Is it a right-handed pitcher? Is it a left-handed pitcher? Not looking at those matchups more, because I think if he's going to be your everyday cornerstone guy that you're going to stick at second base for the next, 6, 7, 8, 10 years, he's a guy that's going to have to play every day. So I think you got to stop playing with the, matchup lineup and just, kind of let him figure it out, because he's obviously proven, in the first couple of years that he's been up in the majors, that like when he's on the field, he can be really productive on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, he won a Gold Glove last year, so defensively we know what he can do, and offensively, he works the count better than I think anyone. I mean, it's proven
Truly.
He works the count better than anyone on the team. So yeah, I mean, he needs to be on the field every single day. I mean, if he's healthy, he needs to play 150, 155 games. There's no reason to take him out of the lineup, even against a lefty, because he can hit lefties, he can hit righties. He's just like a professional hitter. And the jump he made last year was probably the most impressive on it from anyone on the team, I think. Just
Really?
What he went from in 2022. He was good, he was serviceable, but I mean, he became like one of the, I would say probably one of the top 3 or 4 valuable players in that lineup last year, just from what he could give you from working a count, stealing bases. Power is not really going to be part of his game. He hits home runs here and there, but it's more so getting on base, making things happen on the bases. And he shows he can do that. So I think we're going to see, he's still relatively young. So I think we even see more of a jump this year from him. And I mean, I don't think it would be far-fetched to say in the next couple of years, we could see Stott putting up all-star numbers.
Oh, absolutely. Now talk about Trey Turner, right? Because Trey Turner had the rough start, right? Didn't really figure out a lot of stuff until the middle to the end of the late but to me, I'm looking at that and going, if I can get that production that I got towards the end of the year, if I can get that from day one, you could then put him in the conversation, with the guy where he was when he was in the MVP conversation, and to know that you're going to stick him in the middle of the lineup with the type of protection that he's going to have. How much of that do you think is going to be tied into the fact that he's in the second year? You're not coming off the World Baseball Classic. You're not starting on a new team. I'm looking at Turner and going, if I can get that kind of production, the sky's the limit for this lineup.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think he's probably one of the most important pieces to see what happens here. I don't think it's possible that he could be worse than he was in the first half of last year. I really think he's going to take that momentum from the end of last year. He had a full spring training, so he can get through his routine. He got his at bats and everything. I think he is going to be drastically different. I think, we've talked about it before on the show about looking at the back of the baseball card, right? You look at his career averages, and he was just so far below in everything last year. But I guess by the end, home runs wise, he kind of got to where he normally is. But I fully expect a way more consistent year from him. He's comfortable now. He's been here. Like I said, he had his normal spring, and I can't see him regressing at the age he's at. Like, maybe in a couple of years we start talking about that, but I think he's still a top 3 shortstop in baseball, and I think he's going to put up a really good season. So but I think he is one of the most important factors going into this year. Having consistent production from him makes this lineup a really formidable beast to deal with.
All right, outfield, right? You're going to have some combination of Marsh, Pache, Schwarber, Rojas, and Castellanos. Is there what's the most desirable combination of those guys?
I mean, I think ideally what you have is Cassie's going to play right. Ideally, Rojas starts hitting and he's your center, and then Marsh is your left. I think that's the best combination because you really do want a left-handed bat somewhere else in that lineup. And then Schwarber being the DH. Now, the days that he's in left field, I think you have to put Rojas in center field, whether he's hitting or not, because you just need that extra little bit of insurance out there.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of those things you have to do. But I think ideally, most of the season, I think it's going to be Marsh in left, Rojas in center, and Castellanos in right. Ideally, right? I think that's what the team's envisioning. I think that's what the fans are kind of envisioning. But again, it's going to depend a lot on what Rojas does, like we talked about in the beginning. And if he doesn't perform, then I think you got to think about putting Marsh in center or Pache in center. And then go from there. But then there's a lot of, I think that's the only area where you kind of have some some question marks, right? And it all hinges on what Rojas is going to do. But yeah, I mean, I love Marsh. I like what he's done. He had a really good year last year. Can he sustain it? Hopefully, he's still young. He's coming off the knee, the arthroscopic knee surgery, so that shouldn't be anything that I would think would hinder him too much. The one I do get a little worried about is Castellanos, just because he's another one where consistency is not always there with him. He had a really good year last year. He had a really not good year in 2022. So I'm kind of wondering what we're going to see this year from him. I think he's the biggest wild card that we have out there in terms of someone who's going to play every single day. Where Rojas could be that guy, but he's still young. Cassie's going to play every day. He's the veteran out there. So we'll see what happens. But I think the outfield is definitely where you're going to see the most shifting around, at least in the beginning of the season anyway.
All right, Eric, I'm handing you the lineup card.
All right.
What do you ideally, how do you build this lineup to, be as offensively productive and defensively secure?
Okay, so this is, obviously it's been one of the more controversial topics, but I think you got to go with what's working until it doesn't work. So I'm batting Schwarber leadoff.
Okay.
I think Trey Turner is a prototypical 2-hitter. Bryce has to get as many at bats as possible, so he's hitting 3. He should never hit below 3 in the lineup to get him up to the plate as many times. I think the cleanup role is going to be one of the most important roles for this team because it's going to be, I think we're going to see kind of a revolving door here. It's going to be kind of going who's hot at the time. We kind of saw it last year where Cassie would do it when he was hot, but then he got moved down to 7. So I'm thinking they may start the year with JT, or I would start the year with JT in the cleanup spot, see what we get from him. In the 5 hole, I would do either Bohm or Stott. I guess let's do Stott there just to get another lefty in the mix.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, because then we got righties all down the bottom. So okay, sorry. Let's do Bohm. We'll have 2 righties in a row. So Bohm 5, Stott 6, Castellanos 7. Let's see, Marsh 8, Rojas 9.
Okay. I would go kind of in that same vein. But I think about the way that you just built that lineup and to think about a guy that has the offensive production of a guy like Castellanos and the flexibility that you have that you're trying to figure out a way to maneuver him and you can't get him in the lineup until 7. That says to me that, you have the potential to be wildly offensively productive. And to look at the opportunity for the way that this lineup can be built. Yeah. I love the idea there, and I can't remember. I'm trying to remember where I saw it. I'm trying to look it up as you were talking. There was a guy who I follow on Twitter that was making the case that you almost to the point where you're talking about getting Harper as many at-bats as possible, about putting Harper in the leadoff spot, because that leadoff spot gets somewhere in the neighborhood of 38 to 45 extra at-bats over the course of the season. And I understand how, offensively impactful, Schwarber can be, and how, when you put it that way, that leadoff spot is really the only time that he's really batting with nobody on is that very, very first at bat. So, but I love that top 3, right? Because you have the potential for that instant offensive impact with Schwarber at the start of every game. The only concern is when he gets on base and he becomes that speed albatross that prevents, guys like, Turner and Harper coming in behind him, which are guys that can get those extra base hits. That is Schwarber being on first base maybe prevent Turner or Harper from turning that double into a triple because they got Schwarber carrying a piano in front of them. But I think the way that Trey Turner and Bryce Harper, putting those 2 guys back to back, but also knowing that you've got Real Muto behind them as a protection, right? And then you've got, could you see a scenario where you maybe slide Castellanos up in that 5-6 role
Mhm.
and maybe slide Bone back? Like this kind of all goes back to that roster flexibility, that you're going to have opportunities as much as you want to kind of build that consistent lineup and go to that lineup every day. It really is going to, the only thing I don't want to see Rob Thompson, kind of like cherry picking every day. That
Right.
like, if that guys are being offensively productive, keep them in the lineup, keep them in the same spot. But if they're not, you have that flexibility to be able to kind of go and maneuver some of those spots, and you've got the veteran depth with guys that are able to handle it, right? Guys that, you're now talking about Alec Bohm, who's I would consider a young vet now, that, if you have to move him in the lineup, you're talking about, guys like Castellanos, who's a pro's pro, and you're talking about Turner in the same vein, like Harper. You have guys that are going to be in the lineup every day, but you also have guys that understand the professionalism of being able to, kind of put this roster in the best position possible. And if they can just all avoid what happened at the end of that Diamondback series where all the bats went quiet, it really becomes hard to envision a time where you're not going to get the offensive production from somewhere in that lineup, because there is so much of it.
Yeah, and I really think, those three righties, Realmuto, Bohm, and Castellanos, can all hit anywhere between 4 and 7. Like, I mean, that would be my opening day lineup, but they did, and Thompson did it last year, right? It's like, if you have a guy who's on a tear, okay, move him up, get him an opportunity with more guys on base. So I think all three of those guys are interchangeable. I think we're going to see all three of those guys hit probably somewhere between 4, 5, 6, and 7 at different points this season. I think the only consistent spots we're really going to see are the top and the bottom. You're going to have some combination of Schwarber, Turner, and Harper in the top 3, and you're going to have some combination of your outfielders, Marsh, Rojas, Pache, Merrifield, whoever's going to be, probably in that 8-9 role, which isn't even necessarily a bad thing now with the universal DH, right? Like, it's not like hitting 8th means you have a guy behind you who's an automatic out, hopefully, anyway. So I think really those, that 4 through 6 spot can be interchangeable, because even Stott, I mean, the thing is, he's the only lefty out of those 4 guys that we're talking about. So I feel like with him, you got to kind of put him in between some of them. And I don't know if he again, he doesn't really have the power to probably be a 4 or 5 guy, but having him in I think Stott in the 6 hole, or if, Turner's taking a day off, putting Stott in the 2 hole, I like him in either of those 2 spots. So there's a lot of versatility there. And Thompson's not afraid to move the lineup around. But like I said, or like you said, I don't think we want to have it, change daily, right? I mean, every couple of weeks, if, like I said, if a guy's hot, move him up, get him to see more at bats. If a guy's cold, maybe move him down a little bit, let him work through some things where, he could be buried a little bit more. So it's a good problem to have, where you can kind of shuffle around this much and really potentially not lose much production at all.
Eric, any other Phillies related stuff before we jump into a couple fun topics at the end?
Phillies, I think we covered most of the Phillies stuff. Wheeler's splitter. That was, I forgot to mention that during the rotation piece that we were talking about. But his splitter is so filthy. And it's going to be awesome, because there's a good chance that, and he even said it in an interview, like, he thinks that pitch could put him in Cy Young contention. And I mean, he already kind of has been. So it's like that, having that extra pitch to now run away or run into a lefty. It's like, that is absolutely a game changer. So that was the one piece. The best video
that I saw of that was the overlay where they ran both of those pitches simultaneously between the fastball and the splitter. And it's literally like the ball literally just divides and goes in opposite directions, but everything up until like 20 feet before the plate looks exactly the same. It is wild it's to crazy. See that, like, in the course of like an off season, that you can develop and essentially master a pitch like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's a game changer, and Wheeler was already probably a top 5 pitcher in baseball. this
Mhm.
solidifies him as one of the best in baseball.
All right, fun topics. Here we go. The opening day ceremonial first pitch subsequently gets revealed on the New Heights podcast that Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox are going to be throwing out the first pitch. Is this a situation where we just like all of the teams just get each other? Like they just get it. They all know that like this is going to be, with the way that you had them in the locker room celebrating at, in some of the post-game celebrations last year, two guys that are iconic in this city that are, going to go down as, guys that just will kind of, the jerseys will live eternally and will always be relevant. Talk to me about having those two guys throw out the first pitch.
Yeah, I mean, it just shows like how, like you said, how connected all of the teams really are. I mean, we see it all the time when, during Eagles season, we see Phillies players at Eagles games. During Phillies season, we see, every other sports team player because they're all off. So at a Phillies game, last night, Rangers Suarez rung the bell at the Sixers game. And who was on the court with him? Christian Pache, Johan Rojas, and Junior Marte. So it's like, they do all get it. And it is one of those things where I think it's kind of unique, where you don't always see players from their respective cities supporting that team, right? Because hardly any of these guys are from Philly, right? Where you'll see other guys who are from different places go support wherever they came from, whatever team they kind of grew up rooting for. But here it's like all these guys kind of are like transplants and have all adopted that Philly sports mentality, and it's awesome to see. So I think having that, it's a good touch with the fan base. Obviously it's gonna get people fired up because both those guys contributed so much for the Birds and had such an impact in the city for in their sport and everything. So it just kind of shows, it's got. I think all the teams have a pretty good pulse on things now. Now that the Flyers have a nice new regime in there, and they kind of have a pulse on the city with Jonesy and Briere and Hilferty. So it's just kind of having all the teams kind of interconnected really does make it a lot more fun.
All right, second topic. Here we go. The Phillies are expected to have a jersey patch by the All-Star break.
Mm.
Do you have any particular candidates that you would like to see as the first official jersey patch? It says that they're not going to have it obviously opening day, but the second half of the regular season, when they play in Pittsburgh on the 19th of July, is when they're expected to have, that they've received multiple offers from many companies. Is there a team in mind that you'd like them to kind of partner with?
I think it'd be cool to have something local. I've seen people put out there like Wawa and stuff like that. Like, I think that'd be kind of a cool one just because it is, it's associated with Philly. The whole baseball uniform thing and the patches and the City Connect uniforms are also stupid. So it's probably be something dumb that we don't like. And it's going to create a big stir on social media. And it's going to look terrible. So I'm prepared again, just like with the City Connect uniforms, I'm always preparing for the worst. And if it's good, okay, cool. But it would be cool to see something local, I guess. Wawa, Tasty Cake, something like that. But I don't know. How about you?
So the just with the color scheme, right? Wawa seems to me like it's a natural fit because it would be the one that you could put on there and would kind of like just become a part of the uniform. Mm-hmm. But there are so many local companies that would wildly fit. I think the idea with Tasty Cake, Hatfield, right? You've got enough local team. I keep saying teams, but enough local companies that are kind of in the mix that is really. Do you want a patch that's going to stand out and Or do you want to just be the patch that's on there because it will just kind of live eternally? I don't know. I would love to see a Wawa to me, a Wawa, Tasty Cake, Hatfield kind of to me is a lot better than the one that I'm seeing right now on like the Blue Jays, which is like a TD Bank, like just a generic big market bank. Like to me. that to me would be kind of sacrilege. I feel like in this city, it would only be appropriate to have a company that's local. So
yeah, I guess in terms of banks, the only other one, now that you said that, I guess like if Citizens Bank did it, they could kind of flow because they could have the bell. It's the name of the stadium. So like, I guess if it came from banks, that would be like the only one I would kind of like be like, all right, that one kind of makes sense. But yeah, no, I don't get into this big, stupid national corporations on there. It's so dumb.
Oh God. Well, listen, Eric, it's opening day. What's the thing you're most looking forward to today? We know the Phillies are going to play tomorrow, but in terms of being able to tune in, what are you looking forward to most as we wrap it up?
I don't know. I mean, today there's just like because it's every team is basically putting out their number one. So there's some really good starting pitchers out there. Corbin Burns is making his Orioles debut, so that's kind of a good one. Basically, I mean, my MLB TV account is going to be getting a lot of action today, be flipping through a few different things. I think it used to be a thing. I don't know if it still is, but you could put on multiple games at once, like split screen or quad screen. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of flipping around. Checking out fantasy players and just seeing guys with new teams. So it should all be, it's good. Again, it's just, whenever baseball starts back up, it's just a good time. So just planning on pretty much watching. Now here's the other thing, sorry to drag this on, but there's no games starting before 3:00. There's like
that's what I was just
5 games at 4, and there's some night games. And from what now maybe I missed something, but from what I'm seeing research wise, there's one game on MLB Network at 4 or something, and then ESPN's taking the Rangers Cubs game. There's no other nationally broadcast games on opening day. So basically, if you don't, so you can't watch other teams. So unless you have MLB TV or MLB Network, it's like, what is baseball doing with the broadcasting? It's just again, I'm pissed off about the uniforms. I'm pissed off about the broadcasting. It's like, I love baseball. Just Rob Manfred, do something right.
It's this was going to be my exact way to end, and I hate to end on a negative, but like the idea that at the very least on opening day that you don't have every team playing as much as they can, but also that every game is not available in some way, shape, or form. That even if you make it available online, right? Like on opening day, make every game available, even if it's not a national broadcast, but that you don't have to have the MLB app. You don't have to have any kind of subscription. Even if it's just for opening day, right? Just on opening day, every game's available. It seems to me like it would be kind of like just common knowledge. Like, how do we get the game in the hands of most people?
Right.
Just give it away for the first day, right? And then, like, I don't care if you run advertisements and like for the MLB package all throughout the day. Great. This, it's being brought like you for Christ's sake, you can sell the sponsorship and make it, so that you're still making money because you can say, all these games are being offered to you by whatever company. But the other thing is the staggering of games, right?
Yeah.
You could have essentially a game kickoff every hour.
Yeah.
Like started at 1, right? And have a game kickoff, every hour from 1:00 until 10:00. Like you could very easily make that possible, considering that you've got games on the East Coast and West Coast. Like, this is not like we're just 2 guys sitting in our house talking baseball. Like there are bigger people sitting in bigger boardrooms making these decisions. And I'm going,
maybe we should be there. I don't know.
Right? Like maybe we got to clip this and send it to them because this is not rocket science. This is like pretty common sense to be able to figure out how to grow the game. But,
I mean, the NCAA does it like for the first 2 days of the tournament for Thursday and Friday from noon until midnight. Basically, you can watch basketball and they stream it all free on the NCAA live app or website, or you could stream it on your TV, whatever it is. Like, if a college organization can do this, why can an organization that's been around for a really long time not figure out how to reach as many people as possible.
And they've developed that, like the NFL has the red zone, right?
Mhm.
The NCAA on the March Madness app has each individual game, but then it's got the quad box of all the games happening all at the same time. Like the technology is there to be
Yep.
able to do it. And what we know is that people will absolutely pay for it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you don't necessarily have to give it away. You can offer it, but it's I don't know. It's a topic for a continuous topic that we can we can talk about for days and days and days. But listen, opening day, we appreciate everybody tuning in, checking us out. You can go check out the sponsors and all the links everywhere. But Eric, we'll be back probably in a couple weekends talking the whole first couple weeks of Phillies. Hopefully we're not banging our heads against the wall, that we've got a good start. And we'll see you on the next go round. Go Phils.
All right, go Phils.
This is the Broad Street Line, where Philly sports fans leave all of their sports hot takes. Call 267-405-3062 and show us your passion for Philly sports. Don't forget to tune in every Wednesday at 8:30 when we listen to your live reactions to the thrill of victory or the agony of defeat.
Hey, listen to this guy. Tell me how you're feeling here. You're screaming.
I am stoked, baby!
You're screaming like it's still the game going on.
We're talking about the fightings here. The fightings! Said!